Coming up on Network Africa, Amnesty International says French weapons are being used in Sudan's war despite a United Nations arms embargo. Senegal to vote in legislative elections on Sunday, November 17 to elect 165 members of the National Assembly. Plus, Mauritius opposition leader Ramgoolam sworn in as Prime Minister for a fourth term in office. Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olarinde. We begin with the war in Sudan. Rights group Amnesty International says French military technology is being used in the brutal civil war, and this is in violation of the United Nations arms embargo. The rights organization says the Rapid Support Forces militia is using vehicles in the Darfur region supplied by the United Arab Emirates that are fitted with French hardware as it battles the army. Amnesty's Secretary General, Agnes Kalamard, adds that research shows that the weaponry designed and manufactured in France is in active use on the battlefield in Sudan. Well, France and the UAE are yet to comment on Amnesty's latest statement, although the UAE has previously denied arming the RSF. Well, aid workers say the conflict in Sudan has led to one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, with many thousands of people at the risk of famine. The Undersecretary General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo, is again highlighting the alarming situation in Sudan. At the UN Security Council meeting, Ms. DiCarlo says both warring parties bear responsibility for the violence. Niamat Ahmadi, founder and president of the Darfur Women Action Group, tells of the high rate of suicide amongst women who are trying to flee sexual violence. Well, following the meeting, the UK's Undersecretary of State for the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, Ray Collins, briefed reporters on a new resolution aimed at addressing the crisis in Sudan.
The latest wave of attacks by the Rapid Support Forces in eastern Al Ghazira state has been marked by what non-governmental organizations have described as some of the worst, most extreme violence in the last 18 months. We are receiving reports of horrific violations of international human rights and humanitarian law, including sexual violence committed predominantly against women and girls. We strongly condemn the Rapid Support Forces' continued attacks against civilians. We also strongly condemn the Sudanese Armed Forces' indiscriminate airstrikes in populated areas. We are appalled by the attacks against civilians perpetrated by forces affiliated with the Sudanese Armed Forces in the Khartoum area. Let me stress that both warring parties bear responsibility for this violence.
Widespread rape and murderous violence have been carried out at an alarming rate by the RSF. In Al Jazeera, in the last 2 weeks, have witnessed unspeakable atrocities inflicted on civilians. The shocking accounts of locals confirm that the brutality of rape has sadly forced over 130 women in an unprecedented move to commit mass suicide as an escape from further sexual violence. This should not and must not be the reality in a world governed by international laws designed to protect civilians.
The United Kingdom has introduced a new United Nations security resolution to push the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces to protect civilians and show and allow safe passage of aid. The resolution will focus on developing a compliance mechanism for the warring parties' commitments they made on the protections of civilians in Jeddah in 2023, and ways to support mediation efforts to deliver a ceasefire.
Well, still on Sudan, the Sovereign Council says it would extend the use of the Adre border crossing with Chad. This is seen as essential by aid agencies because of the delivery of food and other supplies to areas at risk of famine in Darfur and Kordofan regions. Adre was closed by an order from the army-controlled government back in February, but was reopened for 3 months in August until November 15, and it had not been clear whether that period would be extended. However, the Sovereign Council has agreed to keep the border crossing open for another 3 months, and the UN has welcomed this decision.
We very much welcome the Sudanese authorities' decisions to extend the opening of the Adre crossing from Chad for the United Nations to continue delivering humanitarian assistance to people in need in Sudan for an additional 3 months. Just a few hours ago, on the sidelines of the COP29, the Secretary General spoke with General Borhan on that very subject and on the importance of facilitating humanitarian distribution in Sudan, in particular through the Adre crossing. Since the crossing was opened in mid-August, we and our partners have now moved more than 337 trucks of load of humanitarian aid through the route, with more than 11,000 metric tons for food and other relief items that could cover the needs of close to 1.4 million people. Distribution of these items continues in various locations around Darfur. A further 30,000 metric tons of supplies are either already in place in Chad or in transit in the area. Adre is a critical lifeline for millions of people, but alone it is not sufficient. As needs continue to spiral in Darfur and across Sudan, it is more important than ever that all necessary routes, including those crossing borders and those crossing conflict lines inside Sudan, are available for the rapid and efficient movement of humanitarian supplies and personnel into areas of greatest needs.
Well, there's a new report by researchers in Britain and Sudan that says more than 61 people are estimated to have died in Khartoum state during the first 14 months of Sudan's war, and with evidence suggesting the toll from the devastating conflict is significantly higher than previously recorded. The figure includes an estimated 26,000 people who suffered violent deaths, a higher estimate than one currently used by the United Nations for the entire country. The preprint study by the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine Sudan Research Group, released on Wednesday, suggests that starvation and disease are increasingly becoming the lead causes of death reported across Sudan. The estimated deaths from all causes in Khartoum state were at a rate of 50% higher than the national average before the conflicts between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces erupted in April 2023.
We found that right across the country, the main cause of death was disease and starvation. In specific conflict severe settings like Al Jazeera, Khartoum, Kordofan, and Darfur, killings constituted the higher proportion of those deaths. So amongst the people who were killed, who died, many more in those 4 areas were killed as opposed to have died of disease and starvation. What is of particular note is that in Kordofan and Darfur, the majority of people were killed, even when comparing to Al Jazeera and Khartoum. What we found specifically in terms of how many people have died in Khartoum, we found that 62,000 people had died due to any cause. Among them, we estimate about 26,000 have been killed.
Away from Sudan now, Senegal will be voting in legislative elections on Sunday, November 17, and that will determine whether the new president and government can gain control over the National Assembly and be able to push through their agenda for reforms. Well, during these snap elections, citizens will elect 165 members of the National Assembly for a 5-year term. Following a 6-month tenure, President Bassirou Diomaye Faye dissolved the National Assembly back in September, citing challenges in collaborating with the opposition-led assembly. Well, the previous legislative elections were held in July 2022, and according to the Constitution, presidents have the authority to dissolve the National Assembly after it has been convened for 2 years, and that deadline was reached on September 12, 2024. Well, the high stakes in the election are threatening to spark fresh unrest after a period of calm following the presidential election in March, which triggered some of the worst violence in the country's recent history. Campaigning began in October on the 27th and is expected to end tomorrow, November 15th. Well, while Senegal is preparing for its elections, vote counting is underway in Somaliland. Election workers are counting ballots after Wednesday's presidential election. The exercise is the fourth since the region broke away from Somalia 3 decades ago. The Election Commission said voting day had passed without any incident. Preliminary results are not expected until late on Friday, with the final tallies expected in a week's time. Incumbent President Muse Bihi is seeking a second term. He was challenged by opposition leader Abdurrahman Mohamed Abdullahi of the Wadani Party and Faisal Ali Warabe of the smaller UCID party. The election was dominated by a deal granting Ethiopia access to 20 kilometers of the Gulf of Aden coastline in exchange for recognition. Somalia has called that agreement a violation of its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Well, despite living autonomously for over 30 years, no single country recognizes Somaliland's independence, but the leaders are hoping that this election brings the region closer to international recognition. Well, going on to Mauritius elections, veteran Mauritian politician Navin Ramgoolam has been sworn in as the prime minister for his fourth term in office. It's a decade after he last left power, and this is coming after his coalition's dramatic triumph in a general election. Prime Minister Ramgoolam took the oath of office during a brief ceremony at the State House, the official residence of the president, in front of a selection of lawmakers, foreign diplomats, and top civil servants. His Alliance du Changement coalition won a landslide 60 of the 62 National Assembly seats with 62.6% of votes in Sunday's ballots.
I, Dr. Navin Chandra Ramgoolam, GCS KFRCP, being appointed Prime Minister, do solemnly affirm that I will, to the best of my judgment, at all times when so required, freely give my counsel and advice to the President or any other person for the time being lawfully performing the functions of that office for the good management of the public affairs of Mauritius, and that I will not, except with the authority of the Cabinet, and to such extent as may be required for the good management of the affairs of Mauritius, directly or indirectly reveal the business or proceedings of the Prime Minister or any other matter coming to my knowledge in my capacity as such, and that in all things I will be a true and faithful Prime Minister.
We'll take a break now on the program. Still to come. South Africa's Mineral Research Council, Mintech, celebrates its 90th anniversary in the country. Please join us again. Welcome back to the program. In a bid to upscale foreign investments into the country, federal government of Nigeria has launched a tour in South Africa aimed at drawing $500 million in initial foreign investments into the solid minerals sector and another $700 billion in mining potential. According to a press release by the Minister of Solid Minerals Development, Mr. Dele Alake, the show will span for 4 days, aiming to leverage South Africa's mining expertise and engage major stakeholders in unlocking Nigeria's resources like gold, tantalite, limestone, and lithium, which are key to diversifying the Nigerian economy. This is also part of reforms aimed at reducing Nigeria's dependence on oil and also to diversify Nigeria's economy. South Africa's Mineral Research Council, MINTEC, is celebrating its 90th anniversary of advancing the country's mining industry. With the theme, Gearing the Industry for a Sustainable Mineral Future, MINTEC reflects on its long-standing contributions to the sector. The council says this does not only celebrate MINTEC's rich legacy, but also marks a significant achievement for the South African government, the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, and all its affiliated partners. Our South Africa correspondent, Innocent Samosa, has more.
South Africa's Mineral Research Council, commonly known as MINTEC, is celebrating its 90th anniversary, reflecting on its contributions to advancing the country's mining industry. The executive manager at MINTEC, Dr. Elma Mula, shares some of the key achievements that have defined the council's legacy in South Africa's mining industry over the years.
So a lot of development was done at MINTEC. So we have experience in uranium, in different base metals. We're currently working on materials for the batteries because everybody is interested in electrical vehicles. So we are doing a lot of work and development on the precursor materials that you need for batteries.
As we see a global push for sustainability, including targets set at COP29, Mula speaks about steps that MINTEC is taking to help reduce the carbon footprint of the South African mining industry.
Look, in the division that I'm leading, I'm head of hydrometallurgy. So in hydrometallurgy, we are working to using less water, less electricity, creating less waste, recycling where we can.
The executive chairperson of Kalahari Manganese South Africa, Daphne Mashile Nkosi, says that fostering beneficiation in the critical mineral sector is essential for the development of the African nations.
Political will in terms of the policies that are implemented in terms of that. Number two, energy and water. Number three, we need to be supported in terms, we must be ready for industrialization. And I think our governments must actually put structures in place to support the private sector and work together. And as I said earlier, the trust deficit between the private sector and government must come to a stop.
The African continent has got lots of mines, but the reputation is not that good. Some parts of the continent are still reeling with issues around beneficiation. Now, as we celebrate MINTEC's 90th anniversary here, delegates says that much more still needs to be done to transform the sector. Meanwhile, some are calling for increased collaboration between private sector and public sector. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samos, Channels Television News.
Here in Nigeria, the Lagos State government has reaffirmed its commitment to permanently address the menace of flash flooding and reclaim the environment from all sorts of infractions. This was after an inspection tour of some drainages and projects at Etiosa local government area. The State Commissioner for the Environment and Water Resources, Mr. Tokubo Wahab, reiterates that it is a task that must be accomplished without delay.
How best to put an end to the issue of perennial flooding on the island is the reason for this routine exercise by the Lagos State Commissioner for Environment and Water Resources, Tokumbo Wahab, alongside other senior government officials from the ministry to carry out an assessment of drainages and water channels in Lekki area of the state. The assessment tour kicks off from the Orchid Road in Ward Royal Pine Estate to inspect the ongoing construction of a secondary collector connecting system 156-157 water channels that will help address flooding in Lekki and its environs.
For the past few months, we've had a major negotiation with residents and homeowners around 156-157 to the extent that they obliterated 156 entirely. And there were just two options: to remove those encumbrances, houses and whatever, and put back or reinstate 156 to discharge it to a quota with 157, or they come up with a practicable, pragmatic design, and they will fund the design to discharge the storm water meant to have been discharged by system 156, 157 into a quota And the designs were approved by them.
The team moves to Ikota GRA to check out the bill of quantity prepared by residents to have a middle ground following massive infractions for the construction of a secondary collector by the residents.
I won't wait for the next train to leave. Yes, sir. You have to start the work, and we have to keep monitoring the work.
Lagos State Water Management Office, also in Lekki, is the next stop to inspect illegal dredging activities going without environmental impact assessment approval. The commissioner raised concern over the buildup of shanties along the Kuramo Beach corridor and says enforcement of contravention notices will commence as soon as possible.
Kuramo water is very strategic for Victoria Island. I think the water around there behind us. And we've also had conversations with the contractors doing the coastal road that they must allow the outlets to discharge originally the way Kuramo water is meant to discharge into the Atlantic. So we came to certify that and ask them to give these squatters a notice to vacate so we can clean up this whole neighborhood.
The tour was rounded off along the coastal road, and the Lagos State government advised property owners whose structure do not have the required setbacks to remove them or have them removed.
Well, still in Nigeria, the Benue state government has set up a purchasing scheme for agriculture produce directly from farmers across the state. And this is in a strategic move to address post-harvest losses and enhance food security through the establishment of a warehouse receipt system.
The Food and Agriculture Organization's latest statistics of food security says over 36.6% of Nigeria's population will suffer hunger in 2025 as food production declines amidst insecurity and climate change. Benue, the food basket of the nation, is dealing with food inflation exceeding 21% due to insecurity and displacement of its farming population by herders' conflicts. The Benue state government is taking steps to maximize available produce as farmers begin the 2024 harvest season through the off-taking and warehouse receipt system.
We want farmers to have value for their produce, and that is why the government or our office want to participate in the market phase. Time without numbers that we see that people come to take our agro-commodities and our farmers don't have value for what they have produced. And that is why BIPC is taking the lead to make a hub so that we will be able to, purchase all the agro-commodities and keep it so that anybody that wants to come and purchase, you come directly under the BIPC, being the investment arm of the state.
The president of Benue Farmers and Traders Protection Development Association and other stakeholders call for a solution to the problem of pricing, weight measurement, and middlemen profiteering.
Our market does not make absolute use of waste care. And secondly, we have to promote the customized Benue side because people who come to this state and buy, most of them even bring their own, branded bags here. You see Benue produce going out in Nasara rice, Nasara the same. So what, among other things, when state government is involved, there will be competition.
It's high time we need to allow our people to know how to use scale. You are selling by weighing, so why don't you teach people? This is a computer age. You understand? We are developing. You understand? The farmers don't even know what they are selling. Let them understand the use of scale. Because we are buying by scale, we are selling by scaling.
Managing Director of BIPC warns of the consequences of allowing the festering of food crisis as he cautions against diversion of farm produce.
We want the direct purchase of all the agro-commodities. We want the farmers to know the unit cost of what they have been producing. We want the farmers to know how much it costs per bag. We are also using the Benue sack bag, which has been introduced by the Honorable Commissioner of Commerce, Trade and Investment. We also want to mitigate the risk of people coming going directly to the farmers to take this produce. It is very, very important for us to trap and track how much produce have been going out of Benue State.
With over 36.6% population projected to rise even more by 2025, which could exacerbate food insecurity, the Benue State government aims to become the central hub for agro-commodity market to ensure farmers receive fair value for their produce.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde.